Welcome to the introduction of ArcGIS Urban, transforming your plan to 3D. My name is Gordon Sumerling, and I've been with Esri Australia now since 2007. My background is land administration, all things imagery, and LiDAR. Today, we're going to look at Esri's new offering for the urban environment, designed to spatially enable your planners in your organisation. Cities are complex, dynamic, and interconnected. They need to attract investment, manage housing affordability, and their sustainability goals. Technology can change and shape how we build a place for everyone, while at the same time providing cities the ability to react at the pace in which things are happening around the rest of the world. GIS provides the building blocks for these, and ArcGIS Urban can leverage these building blocks. The solution is all about real people, and it focuses on some key workflows, which we'll get into during this presentation. Public sector planning teams need tools to bring traditional policy making towards more analytical and scenario-driven processes to evaluate proposals and deliver digital engagement. Private sector developers and AEC firms need connection to context and regulatory information as a basis to calibrate their proposals. And citizens, the general public, want to get involved on their own time, make their voices heard, and receive notifications of projects in their regions. Many cities for a long time have used 3D physical models, much like we see here, which have played a key role in providing context for ongoing projects. This model is quite detailed and nearly impossible to update and share, especially without being in the same physical space as what we're looking at here. The classic way of modelling the built environment, however, can be replicated in the digital space. 3D base maps, feature-based mesh models, and the replication of existing built environment as a basis from which to plan or design future scenarios. Esri has released a machine learning solution, deep learning, that can capture and model the reality. And when we work with our partners, we get full 3D reality mesh being delivered. This transforms the way we design and plan our cities. This is the reason why Esri has invested substantially in geo-enabled tools to support the spatial planning and the process of urban development. Some key solution elements are a modern web GIS, foundation for the data and the organisation in the planning teams. 2, a spatial data model and scenario planning tools that are more traditionally focused at policy guidelines to a more analytical and parametric-driven process. A community of engagement hub, providing the tools and destination for your general public to receive information about ongoing initiatives and activities and updates to plans, providing feedback to your organisation about what's going on. And 4, providing those information products that can be configured to serve the community, surveys, map-based storytelling, and other immersive experiences. Each of these elements are playing a major role in the digital transformation of the city and the regional planning. So let's jump into the first two of these elements. Let's talk about ArcGIS Urban to start off with. Over a little year ago, Esri released the Urban product, a web-based application built on ArcGIS Online and soon to be delivered in the enterprise solution as well. Esri wanted to design a system that utilises 3D as its core and provide a common operating environment that everyone will be familiar with. This would support the planning and urban design process and can be benefited from the high resolution view of the city. Developers and design firms need connection and context to regulatory information as a basis to calibrate their proposals. And city planners require a common view of these proposed projects to both internally design and build tailored views for their general public, alongside the ability to easily conduct spatial analysis. And here in this view, we're seeing a 3D line of sight from a location within the proposed building. We see that this type of system can streamline the review process from initial proposal through to approval and construction. As our cities undergo complex planning initiatives and updates to the local zoning and land use plans, there is a critical need to visually understand how things will change. Scenario planning for cities and regions gives design professionals the ability to build out and test alternative futures. These plans can be analysed with automatically generated capacity indicators for impact on housing, job growth, trip generation, CO2, and more information such as parks and analysis. By incorporating GIS into the planning and design process, goals can be less abstract and more achievable, providing important reality check for ongoing work to both internal staff and external public. Many communities have developed scorecards or dashboards to track these citywide indicators and metrics, in part because what gets measured does get done, and because transparency and accountability are foundational to how constituents engage with the city and the local government. Finally, and most importantly, the ability to engage with the community is critical to the planning and design process that goes on inside a city, state, and organisation. The ability to deliver this engagement over digital mediums can give staff easier way to collaborate internally and with the community at scale. Communicating out important information to citizens while also leveraging tools to enhance how the feedback is collected. This is all part of the ArcGIS Urban environment. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a demo of what the ArcGIS environment looks like. This will be based around the City of Melbourne. We'll look at the 3D city, we'll look at key indicators, proposed projects, and planning and design changing scenarios. So here we see the City of Melbourne in ArcGIS Urban. We're easily able to see this city in 3D and understand how the developments are occurring throughout the whole city, providing tools such as shadow analysis, as we see here, throughout the city at different times of the year, different times of the day. Urban provides access to a multi-level capability as well. So for example, I'd like to understand where the Cross River Rail or the underground rail is actually travelling underneath the City of Melbourne. I can view that in 3D by simply turning on the layer, moving over to the area and then going below the surface and seeing how that actually affects the basements of other buildings around. Also with this, I can go and get my 3D mesh of the city as well. So this is essentially a textured, fully rendered, three-dimensional model of the city flown and then rendered to be draped over our environment. It's quite powerful because it gives us a reality of exactly what's there today. Now, we spoke about before the different capabilities. We have projects for future building projects, plans for designing and getting scenarios and ideas, and then indicators of things like movement, population, travel times, those sorts of things. And finally, the ideas, where people can put things through. I'm going to go here and grab some indicators for the City of Melbourne. So let's have a look at train access for the entire area relative to people's properties. What you'll see is that here are basically the lines and walking times to get to the train stations from the housing. And you can see that highlighted there very easily, red obviously being the shortest time. This is simply a data source that is hosted inside the ArcGIS environment. And they can be shared across organisation or wider out to the general public. These indicators are being shipped out of the box with ArcGIS Urban delivered through Living Atlas. You can build your own indicators as well, such as this population density one that we're looking at now. This is a 3D representation of the population density through the City of Melbourne. You very quickly understand where the population is located, and you're able to get access to information, statistical information, for those particular items through the city. Now, we have this concept of ideas where the general public can come in through ArcGIS Hub and access our plans and make comment about those. And you can see here we've got sentiment associated with those. I can go and zoom into any of those particular sentiment ideas, or even go and add a new one. As in this case here, I'm going to put a comment against this proposed building. I don't particularly like it. I think it's too tall. So I'll put that comment in there, and it goes into the system, and then the planners in your organisation can receive that information and start to analyse it. Moving on then, we're going to start to talk about projects. So when I get a new building proposal come in, having a look at those particular applications. Here we can see the different levels of those building projects, and I'm going to go and look at one particular one at the moment, which is an applied building project, and we can see a scenario representing this. Initially, what I'm looking at is the sketched model of this, so what it might look like. Then I'm able to get things like my BIM model, for example. In this case, it's a BIM model of a proposed building, not in Australia obviously, but we've placed it here in Melbourne so that you can get access to that and understand it conceptually what goes on. Configuring this particular model, I can basically go in, and it allows me to have information about the overview of what that building is going to be, the various pictures of what it might look like, and then if I have a planning web page, I can provide those links as well. I can configure various scenarios associated with each of these buildings and bring in my BIM models, my sketch models, and any other 3D information that I want associated with this particular project. I can then share that out to the wider organisation and even the general public if I want, looking for their feedback and their comment on that particular model. Now let's say I'd like to go and put in a new plan. So what I'm going to go and do is I'm going to go and pick an area, and I'll go and turn on the parcels for that particular area so I can visually see where my new building is going to be. I'll draw out the area for that new plan and supply some key information about that plan as well. Things such as the project name, the location, and what the particular status is with that location as well. All this information is relevant for the plan as it comes in, also the project as it comes in, and then is delivered to my entire organisation. We can see here, I'm going to say this is an applied plan. All right, so that goes in. Now in this first stage, you'll see it's represented. We've got an icon associated with it. Now when I go and configure this, I can configure various scenarios. I can say exactly whether it comes to the top of the list or not. And with these various scenarios, I can then say, right, what do I want to do? Well, a lot of these plans here in this instance, I want to be able to go and hide this particular project and mask any of the buildings around. And you can see it immediately removes any of the 3D buildings that are around there. So if I have to demolish buildings, for example, that gives me that capability. My general public and my planners and people inside my organisation immediately get an understanding of what that scenario would be. If I had a 3D model for this location, I could also bring that in and represent that on that side as well. So let's then move on to a plan. Now, Fisherman's Bend is one of the biggest urban development projects going on in Australia right now. So what we've done here is take a lot of the planning zones and bring those into this particular 3D model. First thing we'll go and do is edit the plan in the Urban Designer. And you'll see I've got a number of scenarios that are associated with this. I'd like to understand for each of the cadastral properties here, what is the actual zoning envelope that goes along with each one of those. And the zoning envelope is the maximum height of a building that I can actually build on this particular site. And you can see very quickly here a representation of what that actually looks like. Going into, I'm going to build out now a new scenario to start to do some work in here. I'm going to base it on a pre-existing one, so base it on the scenario one that I had before, so something that I've actually done before that I would like to carry through but not affect that original design. And it's going to bring through all those particular models that are associated with that first scenario, and I've quickly built that in there. So in this first instance, I'm now going to go look at the capacity metrics that are associated with that particular scenario. And we can see that I've got hotels in there. I've got various planning zones associated through here as well, and I can see the proportions of those taking up. And then the zones through here, the number of area and associated capabilities there. Turning to a selection, I'm going to go and pick a particular parcel or property in there, and I see the metrics for that property now associated with that parcel. And you can see here, for example, we've got new population with that proposed building of 735 people based on the floor square or the floor area. I can go and pick other parcels, and we'll see that those, when I start to increase those, you'll see those metrics start to go up based on the selection that I've got. And we can see here the zoning areas existing versus the new. Moving on then, what we'll see now is what if I go and grab an existing parcel. So we'll just move over to the inspector now and look at this existing property here. We can see the type of zone, the maximum height that's associated with this building, the maximum floor to area ratio, and the allowed space use on that particular property. What I'd like to do now is maybe I'd like to go and override what's in there. So basically say the maximum parcel height or building height for this is now 75 meters, and we'll save that. Because this is using a rule-based engine, what you'll see is now reducing the height of that building will basically change the way that building's structured and the building form that we get. We can see that this is a particular building type that we're working with as well. So what I might change this to is a mid-rise hotel. So based on the rules associated with that particular parcel, what happens at that location? So I'm going to go and look at, say, getting that property. You can see that's changed. Now, when you go in here, we can look at the building form here. We can see it's basically built up of residential, retail, and there's a subterranean floor of parking as well. Going and adding a part to this means that I can actually increase the types of what space use for that particular building. It's quite powerful because it now allows me to plan out and form exactly what those buildings are. Moving on then, I can go and say, well, this particular property, I'd actually like to go and split that parcel up. And using those building forms there, you can see that I'm going to take out that parcel there, but now when I go and you'll see that there's some errors that are associated with these properties, and that means that they basically exceed the planning design for that area. Now I'm going to go and take that selected property. I'm going to go split that property now. What it will do for me is it will basically take those floor areas and divide that property up now and regenerate that building based on the parameters that are associated with the properties. So things like setback, things like building height, and space use, you can see the building changes depending on the particular style that I've actually using there to display that. So I'm going to go now and say re-merge these buildings back together, or this parcel back together, and then the rule engine will basically, in 3D through the web, regenerate all those for me. And we can see now I'd like to change the form of this by changing the way the sides are labelled. So I'm moving from a front to a side, and when I do that, the building will then reform based on those rules associated with whether it's a road frontage, a back of the building, or a side of the building. I'm moving over to a different scenario now, and you can see here some of the planning design that's actually associated with those different scenarios. So now that we know what ArcGIS Urban can do, I'd like to shift a little bit on how do we get started. So what are the key data layers that we actually need to make this deployment work? Well, ArcGIS Urban is integrated across the entire ArcGIS platform. Once the ArcGIS Urban model is established, this provides existing conditions data, the basis from which practitioners, planners and designers can create future scenarios. These individual plans and projects, shown as coloured icons here, are stored and can be managed as separate feature layers inside your ArcGIS environment. Scenarios with these plans and projects can be pulled into ArcGIS Pro for further analysis using the Pro connector in ArcGIS Urban. Scenarios can be also accessed directly from the web in City Engine for downstream design, advancement, and custom modelling. So you might want to add some street elements, some textured facades, for example, to your buildings to give better context for the designs that are being proposed. And when that plan is ready to be shared, these scenarios can be made available through the ArcGIS Hub. And this is a component of your ArcGIS environment. Websites can be easily configured and embedded that point directly to the same data sets that you're showing in your environment. ArcGIS Pro connector allows us to read Revit models and AutoCAD design files directly into ArcGIS Pro. We have tools that allow us to bring these web services from our ArcGIS environment into AutoCAD with the ArcGIS for AutoCAD connector. City Engine gives us syncing capabilities, import capabilities, and export capabilities for your planning and modelling environments. And with the development of the ArcGIS Maps SDK for the Unreal Engine, you'll be able to bring all your virtual reality tool sets together as well with these particular data sets that you're working with. We use layers within Story Maps and Experience Builder to provide context for your general constituents. Engage the community with websites that drive ideas and plans. ArcGIS Hub also enables the community. It allows them to explore projects, create projects, and provide comment on those plans that you've got or the building designs. We've also recently released a beta of the Urban API. This allows connections across existing systems, such as permitting systems, to be able to pull that information in and publish information back. All this provides with a powerful set of tools to get there. So the Urban model was originally created in ArcGIS Online, soon to be coming to ArcGIS Enterprise as well. It's composed of base layers, such as 3D base map. This is a 3D set of buildings, trees, terrain, elevation surfaces, and topographic maps. It can be created from LiDAR or through simple data acquisition from your content provider, such as Aerometrics or NewMap. In addition to the base map, you will need to upload items such as land use, zoning information, and this can be detailed out from the Excel spreadsheets that we provide with the tool sets. Then there's the parcels. The parcels are key because they represent the developer constraints, the build form information, and additional building information that's associated with each of those. And finally, the projects. This is the layer that represents your building permitting pipeline, but it can be overlaid on top of that 3D model. And then there's some custom areas that you do yourself as well. So space use types, these are specific to your city. So you design out your own space use types, what can be built in those, what the building forms are associated with those, and then building types as well, how those buildings are constructed. You build those information models, and then that provides you with the level of capability that you need to make something that's useful for your environment. Finally, I thought I'd share some resources with you. So the ability, the training kits, training tutorials, some existing customer stories that we've got out there, and then the community forums as well. They allow you to actually interact with the urban community and get more information, not just from Esri itself. Finally, if you want to talk to someone about this within our organisation, simply use this QR code that you see here on the screen. And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining me today on our ArcGIS Urban tour. Thank you.